team at sport-social.co.uk.
Hello, welcome back to Game Week 2 of the FPL Masterclass. I'm Haider, Rubbani, your host as ever. Today, I'm joined by Rob Blanchette. Rob, welcome back. It looks like I'm beating you this week, only by a point. And there's quite a few people in the comments who have said that as well, that they are beating you. But yeah, how are you feeling after that first game week? You did say we've got to beat 60 points, some great performances, some surprises as well. But all in all, most people had a pretty strong week.
Not too bad. Before we go live, I'm just trying to find the tweet, Haider, of the show. If you put it out, so I can put it out to all of our followers, so my followers are watching it. Yeah, is it on your? Is it on yours?
Yeah,
it's not there. I can't find it. It's not there. It's not on your timeline.
It is, Rob.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, I'll try to find it.
Rob, we're live. Come on.
I know we're live, but I'm trying to. No one's watching us unless I tweet it out, so I can't tweet it out, so it's not on there. I was all right with my first week, 79 points. I was good with that. I also get over 60 points. That's the main amount that I want to get, so I was quite comfortable with that game week 1 total.
I was pretty happy. You know, obviously you took the risk of not going with Bruno, and I think that was quite an interesting one, to be honest with you. I think a lot of people definitely didn't agree with that, and we saw Bruno Fernandes come out with a hat-trick. But all in all, where do you think your points actually came from? Because we obviously had Mo Salah, but no Bruno Fernandes is something we're going to talk about today. Do you feel pretty happy with the choice that you didn't have Bruno?
I was okay with it in the end because I'm trying to play the long game. So for me, it was either one of Bruno or Salah. That was kind of the way it had to be. When I was looking at kind of the numbers, of course you want both, and a lot of people did that, and that's a great way to attack game week 1. Can you attack all the other game weeks by having these 2 players in there at a premium price? Well, yes, if you downgrade the rest of your squad, because that's what it means. It means that there will be players that you won't be able to get into your team, or do you kind of play the averages a little bit more? Now, the main thing for me was obviously to see if Lukaku was a player that we could bring into the team, and I saved 4 million quid for that. We're going to talk about that this week, not quite yet. We'll talk about actual game week 1 first, but really the decision really is, do you decide now to go with one of Bruno and Salah, and then do you go with Lukaku as your extra option?
Absolutely. And guys, look, let us know your thoughts in the comments. You know, what went well for you, what didn't go so well for you, what your shouts are for next week as well, because we'll definitely be going through that today. Rob, let's start though with the top performers last week. So I'm just going to read out the team from last week. I'm going to read out the best team that got the most points. You've got Hugo Lloris in goal. Interesting, you've got the Chelsea defenders. You've got Alonso and Chalobah. You've got Pereira as well from Leicester. Then you had Pinnock from Brentford. Bruno Fernandes, who was the top point scorer. He was absolutely fantastic with that hat-trick. Mo Salah as well was on point again, and he's a player that we'll be talking about later. Paul Pogba with 4 assists. He was absolutely fantastic. Ben Rama with 12 points, and you had Antonio. So talk to me a little bit about your thoughts on that game week. You know, were you quite surprised to see some of the players there? Who stood out to you as a surprise candidate?
I think in the first game week, it's really, really difficult to get the real surprise factors, the ones who are going to give you those points maybe over the first 6 to 12 weeks. You're looking for those bargains, but it's so hard to find them because you're not always sure who's done well in preseason, who's actually going to get that jump into the first teams. So there is always that standing of maybe looking back to last year, who kind of finished the season well, and leaning heavily on those players. And that's kind of what I did with my team. You actually see it. They're mostly familiar faces. There's nothing there that I think was a huge surprise. I think Tsimikas was the one player that I think most people caught on hold of very early, mainly because Robertson was out and it was quite obvious he was going to play. But it was even really then a kind of a risk factor of playing him. There's every chance that Klopp might have completely changed his system to just accommodate for that 1 week. So he got maximum points in terms of the clean sheet and the appearance. So that's 6 points. So across the lines, there wasn't huge surprises, but it was more of a case of looking maybe at teams that have just come up. Brentford, all of their players did very well. Why? Because they got an excellent result against Arsenal. And they're the kind of teams that maybe you can unpick this year's Sheffield United, this year's Leeds United, trying to find that team that's going to give added value. That, let's be honest, the casual FPL player will not look towards, because they'll only be looking for the stars and maybe players that they know really well.
Yeah, absolutely. And guys, if you haven't joined our league yet, it's 2RG2DX. Make sure you do that and let us know your thoughts, because we'd love to see your teams as well. And Rob, I think one of the main points for me from that game week, was that we looked at the premium players. I think that's important. People have to look at the premiums as well, and there's a lot of premium players out there, and it's very difficult to choose which ones to put in. But talk to me about Mo Salah, because he's almost guaranteed goals, isn't he?
He is, and it really is a preference here of I think, again, many people kind of who are United fans maybe don't want to pick Salah, and then also obviously people who watch our show from the Masterclass, they're going to lean towards Bruno Fernandes. So when we kind of look at our team here, we've managed to put up here on the show, this was last week's team, and this showed me where I'd kind of picked certain players. So again, like I said there, no real shocks. Maybe the biggest shock there is Torres. I think a lot of people kind of overlooked him. Now, he did play 90 minutes in that game, but he didn't score. He played through the middle, and he played really well, surprisingly, but he only got 2 points. So that's not great. So that was a little bit of a gamble. And there's certainly other players in midfield that you could pick and could have actually chosen who got more points than Torres. And then when you look at the front line, this front three is quite an eclectic front three, but surprisingly enough, it was a front three that most teams went for. So people were looking at Tony as a budget striker. Ings obviously being a premium player who's actually done well for the last 2 or 3 seasons, but now is at a new club. And then we see Antonio, whose form last season was excellent, kind of finished the season a little bit flat because he had an injury. But then this year, 13 points on game week 1, fantastic total. But then you see Salah right in the middle there, 34 points just from a double from captaining him. And you're going to see now, I think the first weeks of the season are going to be about those 2 players, Salah and Bruno. Which one will fall first? They've all got good fixtures, but which player everyone's going to gamble on, say, a Bruno, and say he doesn't have a good game and he just gets the 2 points. You're going to get a lot of people who've captained him who are going to lose points because they've not looked at other players.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, for me, my team, fairly similar. What's always been a staple for me is, sort of Mo Salah for the last 3 years. Even if he's a Liverpool player, it doesn't really matter. He's been one of the best players, and he's been fantastic. We got some comments here, Rob, saying here that, about Mason Greenwood. Let's touch on him quickly and briefly. He was fantastic. There are questions about Jaden Sancho. I mean, is Mason now forcing his way in? Because he's 7.5 million, and you're looking over Gundogan similar at 7.5 million. If Mason's going to play through the middle, surely he's an option somewhere in this front line.
Totally, and an underrated option probably for most. But people know what Mason Greenwood does. If he plays, there's every chance he'll score and even get an assist. So when you look at that front three, this is all about the balancing of the checkbook. This is what FPL is all about. Where do you save your pennies to kind of give you your pounds? And this is why I think for most maybe players that are playing the game deep into the year, that the Salah-Bruno combination doesn't quite work for them because they're trying to accumulate more points across other games. If Liverpool have a bad game and Salah doesn't score points, that's a big hole in your return. Same for Manchester United. Now, United fans are high at the moment, obviously on Bruno. United are playing well. But if they have a bad week, so they lose against Southampton this week, you're going to find that 80% of FPL players have dropped points because they've ignored maybe the opportunities around them. But yeah, of course, Greenwood is a really good shout because young player, goal scorer, gets assists, and he's on form. So you could easily pick him in one of those front rows there and have him as one of your leading players. Definitely.
Absolutely, Rob. And look, I'm looking at the fixtures for the coming week, and I'm looking, Liverpool against Burnley for the first game. I think that's going to be an interesting one. We'll address, our teams later on, but you're looking at a couple of other matchups here, and you're looking at Manchester City against Norwich. It's not been the easiest start, has it, for Norwich to start to the season. You're also looking at Man United against Southampton. So, there are some very interesting games. And when you're looking at that, you can understand why people are going to be looking towards Bruno Fernandes and Mo Salah. But let's move on to Brentford, Rob. And look, what a performance, taking aside for the fact they beat Arsenal at home, first ever Premier League game. But there's some really interesting options. And we're looking at Pinnock here. We mentioned him in the team of the week. He got 11 points. Talk to me a little bit about Brentford, because you always have to find a team, either it's a team that's lower down the table that surprises you, or a promotion side that comes up and really does surprise you. Think about Bournemouth a few years ago. Charlie Daniels was a great option there. So when you're looking at Brentford, are you looking at a couple of strategic pieces there? You're thinking, 4.5 million, 5 million here could really add value to your squad.
Yeah, this is what I'm talking about looking after the pennies to save the pounds, because there'll be lots of players who will obviously lean towards the top end teams at top 4, top 6, and look at, say, their defenders and feel kind of seduced by the 5.5, the £6 million player. The Trents, looking at Trent, because obviously the extra value that he gives you with the assists and everything else that goes with that. But you've got to kind of dig deeper and look for the Brentfords. So Brentford obviously got a great result on day one. And when you look at their team, I don't know if we've got a graphic. Have we to pull that up at all, Haider? Have we got that one at all?
Of your team or Brentford?
No. Of Brentford's numbers. No, that's all right. We'll go through them. And obviously they've got a clean sheet. Now, that's only 1 week, and it might feel like nothing. But you'll see that kind of cumulatively over a period, say they do really well in the first 6 or 7 games, and that their defenders are around that £4 to £4.5 million mark. I think they are 4.5 on the nose. They are a fantastic investment. Now, I wouldn't go crazy on that. I wouldn't be picking 2 or 3 Brentford players or going overloading. What you find a lot of players do is that they will pick a team that's maybe on form and maybe pick their whole 3 of their back 4 because they feel that that's an easy option. And it's a gamble, isn't it? If they get a clean sheet, then I've got 3 players who are going to get 6 points. But it's rare. The best thing to do is kind of lay your bets and hedge them across and spread them out. And they seem to have players that in their defense and in their midfield who are going to accumulate points nice and steadily this season without Brentford even being any kind of contention. There'll be a mid-table to bottom half team, and Raya in goal, who I picked in my first selection and then changed him stupidly for Sanchez at Brighton. I did that on the last moment because I was looking at Brighton's numbers.
You should have backed yourself there, Rob. The guts always.
You should have backed that. Well, no. See, this is the whole point. This game is not about guts, is it? It's not about that. It's about analysis. So the analysis did tell me that probably with Raya being an unknown quantity, that Sanchez, who had a fantastic season last year, was the better pick. And you know what? Over a 10 or 12 or 13 week period, I still think Sanchez will probably be a better pick. But on game week 1, he wasn't. But Raya at 4.5 million for our people who are watching us here today is an excellent pick as your second goalkeeper. And I've always been an advocate of sometimes just going with 2 goalkeepers who are 4.5. So you just kind of go backwards and forwards between the 2. You don't need a premium goalkeeper. So I've got Schmeichel in my team, and I'm already thinking I might move him out early to take that £1 million back. So I'll have another 4.5, maybe Raya, who we've just said there, and use that million. And that might be the difference from me getting, say, Bruno in or not. Because that million could be vital. It might be the difference in me saying this is the week I go with Lukaku because I've now got that extra million and I don't have to play around with it too much. So Brentford are going to be a really good team this year to watch out for, especially in these first few weeks of the season, because it will give us a good barometer as to what they're going to do. They'll probably have hit or miss weeks. There might be times where their players really don't score very highly at all, but you've got to spread it out across your team and make sure that even your substitute bench, that you've got players from maybe some of the smaller clubs that you don't keep an eye on.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you're looking at how expensive someone like Trent is, and he obviously provides value. He's going to provide assists, but 7.5 million, Rob. That's the equivalent of Mason Greenwood or Gundogan. I think it's a lot of money. Personally, I'd be avoiding him. I know the year they won the title, he was a must-have, but I'd be avoiding really expensive players like that because it's going to impact you having more premium midfielders or strikers. But I do want to talk about something quickly though before we go up, because you always talk about the price increase, how important that is to take advantage of that. So just let's talk about that a little bit. Let's explain to the listeners, why that's so important in FPL.
What, the price increase in what sense? Sorry.
How important it is to exploit, the price increases, or be able to spot when to bring in a player so that you're not losing money. Because for example, I've spent 100 million, right, all my whole budget. There is a big risk that I could look back at my team next week and it's gone down to lost a 0.1, here and there.
Yeah, it's not so much about the overall value. What that comes down to is looking at the market and playing the market. So what's going to happen in the next 2 weeks that we know about? It's the end of the transfer window, the proper transfer window in the proper football, not FPL. And there you will see that players will come into the league that you've not budgeted for. That just will happen. And it could be a case that, someone like Lewandowski's asking for a move. Now, will he move before the transfer deadline? Probably not. But if he did suddenly just turn up at Manchester City or Manchester United or somewhere like that, it always pays just to have some pennies in your pocket. That's what I mean, again, saving the pennies for the pounds. So it's again, hedging your bets. And Lukaku's the big one here that we're going to talk about in terms of he's obviously signed just after game week 1, but we all knew he was coming. That was like, it was the worst kept secret in the universe. And it's about how do you save money to do it? Because what happens is everyone is tempted to spend 100 million on day one. And then you've got no flexibility. Whereas I picked a team for what was 96 million, and I was probably as happy with it as if I'd spent 100. So I looked at all of the players, I looked at the stats, and even this week, I've not changed any of my team from that game week 1 team. Not one penny, because that 4 million is still in my pocket. And I like the team. They're all going to start. They've all got chances of getting clean sheets, assists, goals. It's balanced. They've all got good opponents. So even the Man City trio that didn't do well on game week 1 for me are playing Norwich. I looked at that. I made that decision early because I was looking at game week 2. So that's what I mean about the value side of it. So you can spend the money early and feel good. Like I said this as well, lots of people got over 100 points in game week 1, and that's fantastic. But that won't pay off in the weeks to come, because you'll be making big choppy changes on there. You'll be thinking that player's now not doing it, or that team's not performing the way I want them to perform. There'll also be teams that have maybe bought players like Harry Kane just on speculation, because if Harry Kane plays, you expect him to score, but he's not playing. So that's a problem. So it's about the balance of that. And we will look at Lukaku, because I think he is a player now who's coming back into the Premier League, player we all know very well, especially at Manchester United as fans of the club. But you'll see now about his stats previously going back that his form is really, really good in terms of accumulation of points, not just goals and assists, but how he accumulates points in FPL.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, there's a good comment here, Rob, saying that, he agrees with you that keeping the transfer for a double transfer, the money for game week 4. And there's an interesting comment here from FPL Rubbani saying, Trent's points per price cannot be ignored. I mean, that's interesting. Do you want to give a quick, sort of view on that?
Look, Trent's a great player and a great FPL player. So I don't quite go in the camp with what you said about, avoid those kind of players. The only time I'm picking Trent is if Liverpool are really on a proper run of clean sheets and wins. Then I'm looking at Trent. At the start of the season, I'm still a little bit unsure. Do I really want to pick a team that have got someone like Simicas in the background? They're playing in the team. Is that going to affect it? Van Dijk has just come back. Is he fit? Who's Van Dijk's partner? So all of those questions make me say no. That's why I wouldn't pick Trent. However, in 3 weeks' time, I might be picking Trent. Yeah, so that's the way I look at it. And I think when you jump into these decisions about players, quite often it's because you're doing it with your kind of heart here. You're not doing it with your head. And people go, I like Trent. Scousers will be picking Trent left, right, and centre, won't they? Because he's in my team every year, so I'm just going to lean on it because he's a Liverpool player, etc., etc. That doesn't work for me. I'm looking at it from a more kind of mathematical perspective. But it's right. Yeah, his per game last season, when everyone said that Trent wasn't very good, he was still the best fullback by the end of the season. Now, midway point in the season, everyone was like, oh, he's a waste of money. Yet by the end of the season, if people had stuck with him from the middle of that campaign to the end, they would have had the best scoring fullback. And that's something that people, again, don't really kind of consider.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point, Rob. We're going to talk about something which maybe a lot of these other FPL shows miss, and that's actually talking about, they like to talk about the big players, but we're going to talk about some of the £4 million bargains and some of the £4.5 million bargain defenders, because I think they are actually sort of your foundation, aren't they, of your team? It's really important that you're not going to have premium defenders in your team. You're going to have a couple of smaller ones. So I'm going to throw a name at you, and that's going to be Tsimikas. So he obviously got 6 points. It looks like he'll probably play this weekend. It doesn't look like Robertson might be back. We'll see. But who are you going to pick, or who is in your mind as a really good option to sort of come in, who's going to play regularly at that similar price?
Well, I'm keeping Tsimikas in my team for now because Robertson has come back from injury. He is fit, but there is a chance that he's not quite ready to play matches yet. So he will be soon. Next week, probably game week 3, Robertson will come in. And then the decision will have to be about what you do with that £4 million player. So Tsimikas might not play again for the rest of the season. Yeah, and that's what you have to look at. And you have to make that call early. Or you might just want to bench him, stick him at the bottom of your bench and save him, because what if Robertson relapses next week, can't play for another 6 weeks? These things can happen. But who would I like to bring in instead? Well, I think a really good kind of punt would be Brandon Williams at the moment, £4 million going to Norwich. Again, we don't really know what he's going to do there. Is he going to play? You would expect that he would. But Norwich kind of got a very settled team. You might find that Brandon has to fight his way in. And that might be a transfer that you maybe do in 2 or 3 weeks' time. So you kind of make the notes and you kind of watch him and see if he's actually doing it, if he's making points returns. You've also got to remember this, is that Norwich will still ship tons of goals. So
as they did last time, Rob, when they came up. That's why Aaron's wasn't an option for me.
So this is exactly the reason. So Aaron's, like 2 years ago, 3 years ago when they came up, was the Young Player of the Year in the Championship, got tons of assists, looked really, really good, came up, played in a Norwich team that was shipping goals 4 or 5 every week, and that was that, finished. So that's my problem with Brandon, is that Brandon can be an attacking fullback. He might do really well there. But you've got to have the balance. You know, if you're going to bring someone in at 4 million, you've got to be able to mitigate the downside of it as well. So when you've got a Liverpool player at 4 million, you mitigate it, don't you? Because he's just 4 million and the rest of the players are probably good enough to get them through to a clean sheet, or he's a fullback, so he might get an assist. So that's the way you have to kind of look at it. But I wouldn't be looking at him in any kind of long-term stock, because he's simply not going to play games when Robertson is fit. And you need to then kind of charge him out as quick as you can without losing points. Again, players will do that. They will just get rid of players and they'll lose points for it, because they'll make 5 replacements in a week. And that's a disaster in itself, because players do that over and over and over again. And then you get to the end of the season, you've lost 50 to 100 points simply because you've been irrational in how you make your transfers. Just be patient. We're still in the early part of the season, and that's why there's even in these first 2 shows that we're doing, there's no kind of knee jerking here. It's just about finding the right selections in these opening weeks.
It's always difficult though, Rob, beginning of the season, isn't it? Because you don't want to make those knee jerk reactions. You don't want to panic. Done that a few times, you know. Oh god, I've made 3 subs. That's minus 8. So like, I'm being very, very careful. I haven't actually done my team. We'll talk to your team at the end, but I actually haven't done mine. I'm trying to not give too much away, and I'm also still just trying to figure out what I want to do. But I just want to throw 3 names at you that stood out. So we've already spoken about Pinnock at Brentford, so we're not going to talk about him. I want to talk about Luke Ayling, because he's 4.5 million. I'm shocked actually looking at how cheap he still is, because, you know, I think he was good last season. He offered a goal threat going forward. I thought he might have gone up to 5. You're looking at Tanganga as well, who was an absolute beast against Manchester City. So I think he's someone that let's focus on. And let's focus on Pontus Janssen from Brentford. So he's another player, but he's obviously a centre-back. I think he offers a goal threat in the other opposition box. So let's talk about those 3 players. So let's start with Ayling. What are your thoughts there?
So Ayling scored that fantastic goal at Old Trafford, put it in the top corner, you know, marauded forward, took a touch, smashed it, goal. Luke Ayling last year scored no goals. So I'm not picking Luke Ayling because he put something in the top corner from 40 yards. It's not the way it is. So there is a goal threat there from him, but the threat is so minimal that if you're picking him for that reason, there are better fullbacks between the 4 and 5.5 million pound range that will give you more value over a long period of time. So yes, we want bargains, but we don't want bargains because we saw a nice goal. So that is one thing you've got to be careful of. Now you just mentioned from Tottenham,
Tanganga.
So Tanganga had a really, really good first game of the season. We know that as a young player, in real terms, he's got high stock. He might do really well under a new manager. Is Tanganga going to get me maximum points every week for the next 6 weeks? The answer is no. It's just not going to happen. So there's a whole swathe of these players that might smell very nice, but when you actually taste the broth, it's not real. It's not real. It's just it's kind of little moment in time. You said Janssen there at Brentford. Brentford have got about, including the goalkeeper, 5 players who got maximum points and 2 midfielders that both scored last week. Pretty much any of those players are ahead of Janssen for me, because they've got there's kind of tangible things there that you can kind of lean on. Like Raya in goal at 4.5 million. If you're going to bring in a Brentford player, he's going to make loads of saves this year, even if Brentford get hammered. So Brentford might lose a game 3-0. That would be natural, but he might make so many saves and end up being man of the match and save a penalty. So he will end up getting 12 points. So that's what I'm looking for when I'm talking bargains, because you've got to kind of study the form, but then there has to be some realism around what they can achieve. And I think those players that kind of selected there, they're good, but like I said, someone like Ayling, there is no form in his long-term form to suggest that he would be the right player at the Leeds United. Now, Leeds concede lots of goals, but if I was going for one of their defenders, it would be the lad Sturrock. Is that his name, Sturrock? Sturrock? Is that pronounced Sturrock?
Strike, something like that. Yeah.
Strike. And last year, he was a real threat from set pieces. Yeah, he was playing up in midfield at times, kind of playing more advanced. And then you're kind of looking for those players that have that kind of balance between maybe defense and midfield. So if I was picking a Leeds player just off the top of my head, I would immediately look at him, because he gives you a real danger from set pieces. And it's proven with Leeds, the way that they play, that it would fit him to score a goal. However, I wouldn't be picking him at the moment.
Yeah, well said. Rob, now we're going to move on to the main event. To Romelu or to not Romelu? That is the question. This is an interesting one, right? I think there's a few comments saying that, look, he's probably not up to speed. I wouldn't be putting him in. And I kind of agree with that to an extent. But it's not like Lukaku hasn't been training when he was at Inter. I know he's not necessarily match fit, but he really is a big option here. And I just want to go through his statistics here. We're looking at his points first per season. So you're looking at it now. 2012, 2013, when he was at West Brom, he got 159 points. He then went to Everton the following year, 168. Again, really good numbers. Then you looked at him, he had a dip to 135. Then he had 2 fantastic seasons. So in the 2015-16 season, he had 185 points, and he absolutely smashed it the season later. Season before he joined Manchester United, 221 points. I believe it was 25 goals. He was absolutely smashing it. We'll look at the goals after. Then he had those 2 seasons at Manchester United, had a good first season, 162. And then we know the worries in that season, Jose's second one with 115. And you're having a look at it now. So all in all, though, he's hit over 100 points. And you expect that from a striker of his quality, over the sort of maybe 5, 6, 7 seasons that he's been in the Premier League. But would you really be bringing him now? And what do these points totals suggest to you?
Well, first and foremost, what that shows is that he is, without a doubt, an elite striker. Those points totals are big totals, and it's about context now, about why do you pick him. Now, I've been waiting all week to find out his price. He is 11.5 million, and that's made me go, ugh. So last week when I was talking about him and extensively saying he was a player I'm waiting for, I was hoping he was going to be around the 10 to 10.5, around that kind of mark. Now, people again might think 10.5 to 11.5 is not a lot of money, is it? Well, this is how you do it. You've got to be able to find that £1,000,000 without ruining 3 or 4 positions. So straight away, before we even look at the graphic, 11.5 puts me off a little bit. When you look at the graphic and you can see obviously the Everton years there, and certainly how he steadily climbed from that 135, which is a good points total for any striker, up to 185 and 221, 221 being an incredible total. And then his Manchester United returns afterwards. I think in context, you can basically discount the United ones. So even 162 and 115 in that United team, and again, as United fans, we can all testify, not too bad considering that team was pretty rubbish, yeah, across the board. Team that threatened and could win things and could beat anyone, but in general didn't have its creativity sorted out, had tons of malfunction going on, and he was still getting points. But that Everton total there of 221, I think that is kind of the minimum of what he will get at Chelsea. So you need to decide.
Hold on. minimum.
I think that's the minimum he'll get at Chelsea.
You think he's
I think
better
he could be
2-2-1.
I think he could be the top scorer in FPL this year. I really do. And I think he can do that because he will not just get goals and assists. Now, he got more assists last season than he'd ever had done before. You know, he's actually added assists to his game. It's truthful that at Chelsea, he might not be expected to do that. He might just go back to being a classical number 9, which is kind of what he is. You know, he did it at Inter. But the interplay around him at Chelsea means that I think he will get some of those soft assists, as we call them. You know, the little tap-offs in the box to Pulisic or to Werner, if Werner ever scores, or Havertz or someone like that to set up and get those extra points. But I think he's going to be the real fulcrum of the whole Chelsea team, which means he's also going to get bonus points. So if he gets the bonus points and the goals and the assists and really becomes the superstar of this Chelsea team, and he's got that quality to do it, let's be honest, he has, then he could end up being one of the heaviest scorers in FPL history this year. And then people who at the end of the season maybe had Salah and Bruno and went in and out with them and maybe went with their form, or maybe one of them got an injury, or etc., they'll end up losing their leagues because they ignored Lukaku early on. So that's the way I look at it. Am I buying Romelu Lukaku this week? No. And for 2 or 3 reasons. Like one of our viewers said there, it is early. Is he ready to play? Is he going to be at full tilt in game week 1? He's playing Arsenal. Arsenal are pretty disastrous, aren't they, in defence? Horrible team at the back. I think he'll exploit Ben White. And I think he'll score points. And do you know what? He might even come off the bench with 20 minutes to go and score 2 goals. And that makes him a good buy, doesn't it? But patience. If you've got the 4 million quid in the bank, I see someone else here in our comments say they've got 4.5 in the bank. Sit on it for 1 more week, because it means you're going to have a double transfer next week. And even though it's really early, it means that you can then make that decision, because you might find that Bruno or Salah get a bad injury this weekend. And that's the other thing, always to have it in your head about how do you replace players and what do you do with them. Well, yes, you'd be able to take their money off them straight away and put it into another player, but keep that money in the bank this week unless you've got injuries. If there's an injury in your team and it really affects the kind of whole equilibrium of your side, don't buy Lukaku yet. Wait. And this, he still might score a hat-trick, and you'll all be going, oh, he scored a hat-trick, Rob. But he's very premium. At that price, you've got to make sure that that investment is something that you're going to go long-term with, and you're not going to chop and change him in and out with, say, your other 2 or 3 premium players that you can afford.
Rob, I'm going to read out. There's some fantastic comments, guys. Keep them coming. Let us know your thoughts, whether you agree or disagree. We want to know all your thoughts here. So FPL Rubber Ducky, this is really interesting, Rob. He said, I wrote an article on Lukaku assessing his stats and history, and he is overpriced. His best seasons are 4 or 5 years ago. There's a reason why United got rid. And I'm going to do a little follow-up comment here, because I don't necessarily agree with this bit. He's like, Lukaku's a different player now. He's heavier, slower. The Chelsea midfield will take goals off him. Now, I think that's fair to say about his United days. You know, he wasn't great in his United days. We all know the troubles he had. We all know that he was slow. He's a little bit, I wouldn't say he was overweight as such, but he was much more bulky. He wasn't the player he is now. You're looking at the pictures of him as well. You saw the way he was at Inter. He's back towards that player that scored 185, 221. You know, leaner, quicker, explosive. And looking at this Chelsea midfield and this Chelsea team, they create more than that Man United team did. So if he's hitting 162 in a less creative team under a more defensive manager, surely you're looking at this Chelsea side now and you're looking at Lukaku and thinking, he's a different player. He's a better player than he was at United. He's going to score. Technically, I know it's not as simple as 1 + 1 = 2, but he should, in theory, score more.
Can we bring the comments back up? Those 2 comments, because I definitely would like to address them, because I think they're interesting. So you're saying they wrote an article about Lukaku's stats and history, and he's overpriced. He is overpriced. I think at 11.5 million, he is overpriced. But there's a reason why he's overpriced, and it's about the kind of differential of FPL points spread across the premium players. So what you generally find year to year is the best premium players come in midfield, because they get the assists, they also get goals. They play like strikers, like a Salah, for instance, but yet they're kind of getting striking returns, aren't they? And you're getting the more points because they're in the midfield. But you're saying that his best seasons were 4 or 5 years ago. At Everton, it was basically he played the middle channel, the ball went wide, it came in the box, and he scored. So that's great for that style of team. Chelsea last year, the reason why Chelsea were, by one day outside of the Champions League without winning the Champions League. They would have come fifth. Is because they didn't really have a striker that scored goals. They are going to create chances for Romelu Lukaku this year. So do not be afraid that, Pulisic is going to get 25 goals and Lukaku is going to get 12. That is not going to happen. That Chelsea team will create for him. And he will also, as I said, get these soft assists for players running off him in Chelsea's formation. So when Chelsea play maybe more of a 4-3-3, or they play a system where they're trying to feed the striker through the middle, you'll find that Lukaku will get plenty of chances, but there will be times where maybe he's just laying the ball off on the edge of the box and maybe picking up assists that we haven't seen him do, say, at Manchester United. The reason why it all went wrong at Man United is because of Man United, right? It's because of his manager and because of the style of what the club were doing. And yes, Ole got rid of him because he was heavy. It was one of the reasons why he was too big. He'd been in the gym too much.
But he wanted to leave, Rob, as well.
Well, he wanted to leave because it was going wrong. The dysfunction was too much. He was thinking, this is not for me. So he went to Inter and he lost a ton of weight. He looks like, look at that picture there we've got on our graphic. That's him on the left. That's like the other day. Look at him. He's not overweight. He's not too big.
He's not the United Rom.
He looks like a classical big man Premier League striker with pace, and that's what he's got. He's coming back to England to win the Premier League. He's not coming back just for the money. He's coming back because this is a big opportunity for him and Chelsea. And Chelsea are themselves trying to build that attack that takes them over the top in the league race. Kind of what Conte did that season when they won it from out of nothing, came 4th, 5th, 6th the year before, and then they won the title. This Chelsea team could do that. They've got other things to fix as well. But I don't think there'll be too much point stealing away from the striker just because of the way Chelsea are built. I think Man United might have more of that. I think you might see that Cavani, as an instance, maybe gets less points per game than he did last year because you'll find that there's more goals from Sancho, Greenwood playing out wide. Bruno might even increase his goal tally this year, which would be crazy, but he might well do the kind of system they're playing. And then you might find that people like Fred get goals this year at United. McTominay might get even more goals. That's when I worry about the striker. I don't worry about that with Chelsea because I look at their stats and it's all built towards a number 9. They've got the creativity. They just cannot finish. If Werner could finish last year, he'd have got 25 goals. But he got nothing pretty much because he couldn't finish. And it was really all that was. And I think Chelsea feel that they just need that elite striker. And they might say to Lukaku, go and be a goal hanger, play on the last man, just wait there, just try and stay on side and we'll feed you. And it might help Havertz as well to have a proper striker in front of him that he can maybe pick the lock with. He can be more of a number 10. Because he played as a false 9 towards the end of last season, and I don't think that's he can do it. Not his best role, but I think as a 10 with a proper number 9 in front of him, they could score lots and lots of goals. And the bonus points, don't forget the bonus points. That is how you really get elite players because they get all the bonus points every week.
Yeah, absolutely, Rob. And look, there's a good comment here again from FPL Rubber Ducky saying, his record against top 10 is poor, scores braces against the lower teams. Absolutely. That's when you bring him in. He will. I don't know what that says. He'll be OT to be set and forget. I'm not sure what that says, but
just to add to that, what do I always say about how you win the league? You win the team by beating the bottom 16. Yeah. You beat the team by beating the bottom 16 teams. Yeah, it's not the top 4. So if Romelu Lukaku scores goals against every team from position 5 down to relegation, he is going to be the top scorer in FPL. It doesn't really matter about the top 10 thing. That's, again, I think, a little bit of mystique around Man United. Man United couldn't beat anyone in the bottom 6 during the period when he was at United. So that skews that record terribly. And at Everton, the expectations were less. But this is a different world. I think, he's coming in to score goals and change the fortunes of Chelsea at the top end of the pitch. And I think you'll see a very rounded striker. I think he'll do lots of things that maybe people haven't watched him at Inter Milan and not maybe as sure of what he does. But I think he'll join up really well with them.
I've got his goals here. We'll go quickly mention some of his goals. And then we'll talk about Bruno Fernandes and we'll talk about Mo Salah. But you're looking at the goals here. Look, 17 in 2012, 13, 15, 10, 18, 25, 16, and 12. So he's actually only hit 20 goals once in a season. You're looking at some of the assists as well. Like he's done pretty well, sort of 7 assists, 9 assists, 7, 6. So he's not really got above the double digits in terms of assists as well. But looking at this, what are your initial thoughts looking at his goal tally? And you expecting him? Look, I expect him to hit 20 this season, if I'm honest with you.
Well, just looking at the assist column, first of all, most strikers don't normally do great with the assists. Someone like Harry Kane rewrote the book last year by just getting more assists than he was getting goals, and he was still scoring lots of goals. So it was an incredible bumpy year for a player like him. But if you go back over time, Harry Kane wasn't really getting those numbers of assists. It's just something he's added to his game. When you look at Lukaku being more of an out-and-out number 9, those assist figures, I think, are really, really good. Again, I talked about soft assists, and I think he'll get plenty of those this year. But when you look at kind of the goal tallies, like you say, you expect him to get 20, I think he'll hit that 25 that he got for Everton there comfortably. Because if you can get 16 in that bad Man United team, and it was bad, and we watched it, in the flesh, he's going to get so much more opportunity at Chelsea. So I think he might even be on for a 30-goal season in the Premier League, which would be huge. And that would give him incredible points hauls. And I think he'll also improve on those numbers. I think he'll get double-digit assists this year. I think he'll get 10 or more. And as I said, if he has, to say, a 32-10 season and really has those man-of-the-match performances as well, it's just going to be a bumpy year for Lukaku. But don't buy him yet. Just watch this week. He might destroy Arsenal and everyone will feel bad they didn't buy him like I will. I think, it's terrible. I kept Tony at Brentford. But Tony at Brentford might score a hat-trick as well. So you just don't know. So just hang on for another week and see how it pans out. I think Lukaku is a big option for a premium player. But I get why people want to lean towards Salah and towards Bruno at the moment.
Comment here saying, Rob, if that happens, Chelsea win the league.
They do.
Yeah, they do. I think they could easily. I think he's a missing piece. But Rob, let's move on and we'll take Romelu off the screen because let's talk about Bruno Fernandes and let's talk about Mo Salah. So I've got the bonus points. I don't want to focus on the overall points. We both know, and everyone knows, Mo Salah since he's walked into the Premier League has been probably one of the up with De Bruyne best players. And we look at Bruno Fernandes as well. He's been there for 1.5 seasons and he's been one of the best. Bruno last season got 36 bonus points. You're looking at Salah. He got 21 last season, 26 the season before, 18 before that, and 26. That's incredible from Bruno, isn't it? 36 bonus points. And they are the difference between you winning your league with all your mates, you not winning it.
They are the Ronaldos. So, back in years gone by, I deliberately didn't used to pick Ronaldo because I didn't want to jinx him. That's how I used to be. And I used to come second in my league every year, second, because of Ronaldo. So you are right there. It's just also about maybe watching the form book a little bit more. So in terms of Bruno and Manchester United, he is the guy who's going to drag United to wherever they're going. So if United do win the title this year, you can bet it's going to be about Bruno Fernandes and maybe a kind of a supporting cast of a Pogba, of a Sancho, Cavani getting a few points, Greenwood, as we talked about, Rashford when he comes back. But with those bonus point systems and things like that with Salah, they're easy points in the early weeks, like I said. So I wasn't surprised when people spent all their money on those players. But it does an extra kind of 4 million quid equate to those 3 bonus points over a long period of time. Well, if they perform throughout the season, of course they do. If Salah and Bruno are the top 2 players in Fantasy League again, like they were last season, and they could well be, then everyone's money's well spent. It then becomes a game of who are the other players that you pick. If everyone's got the same players, and you've seen that after about game week 6 or 7, that everyone's kind of got the same team. Because people have just they've dropped a couple of players here and they've kind of sniffed out the players that they want to do. The way you win your league then is by looking at the budget end, is about looking at players who have just burst onto form. Most of the players that won their leagues last year were not the ones who just had Salah and Bruno. They were the ones that went early on Jesse Lingard. So most people didn't go hot on Jesse Lingard after week 1. They went, it's a fluke. Jesse scored 2 goals. Jesse scored 4 goals. Jesse scored 8 goals. I might have to think about buying him. The people that bought him on week 2 of that run won their leagues because they had an extra 50 points in their pocket. So that is kind of what this show is about. It's about finding that method into the madness, finding a way to win your league while the obvious stuff all goes around you. And those 3 top players, they're going to be, I think, the top players for me, as we said, Bruno, Salah, Lukaku. There might be a Kane in there somewhere.
De Bruyne.
You've seen De Bruyne come back, have huge numbers. But even with De Bruyne, when he's getting those bonus points, he's getting those assists. He doesn't normally have big goal tallies. But then, of course, there's the outside sniff there of Paul Pogba now. Paul Pogba, if he plays at the top end of the pitch for Man United, all right, he got 4 assists in this last game. We know this. He got 3 assists for the whole of last season. But if he is a proper attacking player and he's going to play on the edge of the box, he might get you 15 goals and 20 assists this season, which would make him, without a doubt, one of the most valuable players in FPL.
Yeah, Paul Pogba is definitely, when he was playing deeper in the pivot, I don't think he was an option really for people, in terms of an FPL option. But you look at him now, we've discussed it on the Masterclass. If you are a Man United fan, even if you're not a Man United fan, you want to listen to myself and Rob talk about Man United tactically, do check out the Masterclass, a little plug there. But, you're looking at having a look at the way that Paul Pogba, or the position he's playing and playing further forward, he's almost United's more creative. I tweeted this earlier today, their most creative option, because you're actually looking at, if Bruno's making those runs into the box and getting closer to goal, who's going to give him the ball? It's going to be Paul Pogba. Is that a little duo Man United can go? I'm not actually too sure. You'll probably know this, what Paul Pogba's valued at, but he could be a differential.
Well, he's a kind of mid-valuation player, so he's not one of these players in the premium lot, and that's because of exactly what you just said there. He spent a lot of his time at United in the double pivot. So if he's playing further back, we talk about creativity, you just don't get assists off the edge of Harry Maguire's boot. It doesn't happen. So if you're playing in that part of the park, you probably wouldn't pick Paul Pogba. But if you're doubling up players, and this happens a lot in FPL, it's a big part of the game now about, can you exploit one team against one team, but take 2 from one? And that's what obviously a lot of people do with Man City. So you take Man City's heavy 2. Last year it was Gundogan. You might have brought in a De Bruyne, or you might have dropped out of De Bruyne and brought in someone with a bit more value,
Cancelo,
like
or someone like that as well.
Well, Cancelo's a defender, but Cancelo again as a double up worked perfectly. You're right. So Gundogan and Cancelo were the players that I brought in. I even brought in Torres to kind of make weight of those early fixtures. That of course didn't work for Man City on game week 1. Sorry about that, Man City fans. Tough, but when we kind of look at those balancing out points with Paul Pogba, he's perfectly priced to double up with, say, a Mason Greenwood. He's perfectly priced to double up with, say, a Bruno Fernandes. And you're not actually wasting money, not in the sense of whether he has a big week. Like, he might play next week, we play against Southampton. He might be back in the double pivot. You just don't know. Fred might get a knock in training, and Ole might say, I'm playing Pogba further back, which means your investment in an attacking force has pretty much disappeared. So you're going to get 2 points at best. You might even get 1 point if he comes off early, and that's a disaster for you individually, picking players for players. But you might see over the next few weeks that Paul Pogba really kind of spreads his wings and finds a way to add goals to his game. And I think that's the final point for Paul Pogba, trying to find goals regularly from an attacking midfield position. We talk about a lot about him being the floating 8 at Man United, as we said in our last podcast, and it's the perfect description for him in terms of his ability maybe now to start arriving later in the box, because he doesn't. Generally, he doesn't, because of the position he plays at United. He's deeper, he can't get there, so he shoots from long range. You might find that he links up with Bruno a little bit more. And we did see that against Leeds. Bruno went left for about 20 minutes and and Pogba came in as the number 10. And they did that 2 or 3 times. And it didn't come to anything. But it does tell you for FPL going forward that Paul Pogba is going to be in those spaces where he might score goals. And he hasn't really been there in previous seasons. So a good option to make if you're going to have a double up on Man United.
Yeah, absolutely. You're looking at Jaden Sancho again. He's an unknown entity, really. And I know a lot of United fans, including myself, want to see Jaden and think he'll do well. But I think Paul Pogba is a safer and a cheaper option to Jaden Sancho. If United fans have got someone like Jaden Sancho and they maybe don't want to go for the expensive Bruno Fernandes. But Rob, we're going to touch on one player here as a differential to Bruno and Salah, and you could even say a differential to Lukaku, because we're sort of grouping them in the same group. And we're going to talk about Son from Spurs. Now, he scored on the weekend. Look, he's a fantastic player. We all know about that. And last season, him and Kane at the beginning of that season, you were thinking, geez, what is Jose doing here? They're absolutely smashing it. Could they go the distance? They didn't, but they linked up incredibly well. I think they've got the highest, isn't it, in one season, sort of goals to assists to each other. So you're looking at here now. I'm looking at his stats from last season. He got pretty much all his goals and assists in the first half of the season. He got 17 goals and 11 assists. So above 10 for both of them. And he did that the same year as well, the year before, 11 goals, 13 assists. And you're looking back at sort of 28 from 2015 to 2018, you're looking at, 14, 12 goals, 12 goals, so sort of in the round just below sort of 15 goals. And you look at his assists as well, just under 10 in those seasons. Winston's a great option, isn't he? And you're looking at the price of, I believe, 10.5 million. Is he the sort of player that people should be looking at if they're going to go with one of Bruno and Salah, and then they're going to go for just below a premium midfielder?
Absolutely, 100%. And I think, at 10.5 million, and again, you're looking at a premium midfielder who scores goals and gets assists, and someone who's kind of going to be in that Tottenham team like clockwork this year. Last year, you just said there about, I think, where it kind of all went a bit dry for him. When you look at it statistically, don't forget he was injured. So he was out injured for a little while. That will affect his figures. And it was very much weighted towards what him and Kane were doing together. So where was Kane playing? Was Kane scoring goals? Was he getting assists? So most of the time when Kane got all those assists last year, it's because he was putting them in the end for Son to score goals. This year, the big problem for Tottenham is what's happening to a problem like Harry Kane. So is Harry Kane even going to be at the football club? Well, let's say he goes to Manchester City, hypothetically. It means Son's probably going to play as the 9 this year. So he did it, I think, in the first game. We actually saw in that front three that Bergwijn played wide, Moura played in a slightly different role, and he had Son running the middle channel, which is not new for him. But it does mean that he's probably going to get less assists because he's going to be the point of the attack. Now, he might still get those soft assists like we just spoke about with Lukaku if he lays the ball off. But let's be honest, if Tottenham haven't got Harry Kane and Son scoring all the goals, there's not really anyone else who's going to score lots of goals at Tottenham, is there? There's players that will chip in. A Dele Alli might have a season now where he maybe gets 6 to 10 or maybe even more if he's in a more number 10 role again. But I can't really see Nuno playing that system to kind of facilitate that. So Son is a really good choice as maybe your third premium player. If you're looking at it in kind of hierarchy, and we've talked about obviously the obvious 3. And I think it would be a case of an either or at the moment. So do you pick a Bruno with him, or do you pick a Salah with him, or do you even go the whole hog and go Lukaku and Son?
And then go cheaper in striker, yeah.
And that might really upset your league apple cart, because if you have success with that double up and Salah and Bruno just don't score for whatever reasons, and it does happen year to year, then you're going to take a really big sizable points advantage over the first 10 weeks of a season. So you have to think of it like that if you end up buying Son. I think at 10.5 million, it is the kind of very highest value of what I would look at for him. Don't forget, I think Jaden Sancho is 9.5 million. So if you wanted to take a punt, then I think at that value of a player who can get double-digit assists, goals and assists, like he did in the Bundesliga and did it over and over again, then if he does that at Manchester United, then you're going to have a player who's pretty much mid-range, 9.5 million, top end of mid-range, and he's going to be giving you elite numbers. He's going to maybe get you over 200 points of the season. So there's all that to consider in the opening weeks, and that's why I always say don't let the horse bolt, early. Watch the performances. Pick strategically, make sure you've got your players around those premium players who are still picking up points. But you saw in that first week, Salah, amazing points total, Bruno, hat-trick. Can Lukaku match that? I think we'll see him explode. I think we'll see him go early. And I think Son as well will be the primary scorer at Tottenham over the first, say, dozen games. Because even if Harry Kane comes back, don't really think he's going to be very happy, is he? Not going to be the most motivated version of one of our own, as the Tottenham fans call him. I think he's going to be itching to get out in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think so. And there's a good point here saying, you just want to see Spurs for a longer period rather than 1 week. I think that's very fair. Spurs are a bit of an unknown quantity for me. I was really impressed last week with their energy. I thought their intensity was really good. I want to see how they're going to look under Nuno. They're not going to score a lot of goals, but they could be a good defensive option as well, Rob. Wolves were a difficult side to play against under Nuno in terms of, they weren't too bad defensively. And, Conor Cody emerged as a good option. You had obviously the wing backs as well. Lucas Moura as well here saying he was a great option. He was the outball, wasn't he? Against City, and I think he was phenomenal. So he's an option as well. He a couple. I think it was last season or season before. He added a few goals, and he was a good option for a short period. He had a good run of form. But Rob, we're going to bring up. Sorry, go on.
That's why I always say 6 weeks. Yeah, generally, like through the season, 6 week options. Because someone like Moura might be a beautiful 6 week option. So when I bought Lingard last year, it was a 6-week option. Now, it ended up being a much longer one I kept until the end of the season. But that's how it runs. You get to the end of that 6-week period. Gundogan, no one this time last year could have predicted the season he was going to have. And I think he was kind of like 5.5, 6 million early doors, and really someone that you wouldn't have even picked for your bench because you're not even sure he was going to play at City. He could have been a real outcast and just got small minutes. But again, he was a good 6-week option to bring him in, and he extended himself. So that's why I'm sticking there with Torres. You've got my team up there now on the screen for everyone who's listening on Spotify. And I haven't really changed anything. It's just I've tweaked a few positions. And I was tempted to bring Dallas in because he did me at Old Trafford, got his assist. And I was like, typical, he got his assist. But he also, he's in midfield this year. He would have had those 5 goals against him as a defender. That would have been a nightmare. But I'm sticking with Torres. I saw someone in the comments say, what's my opinion on sticking with Torres for now? I think while Manchester City have not got a number 9 and have not got a striker, there's every chance that Torres will start ahead of Jesus. And I think he'll get goals. Like, it's an anomaly what happened at Spurs. Spurs did well to get that result. But I look at Torres and I see big up value in him. Considering he's a mid-value player, he played really well against Tottenham. And there's kind of signs there that if he gets some creativity around him, De Bruyne didn't start that game, but did come on later on. If, say, De Bruyne picks up and plays that match, say Grealish has a breakout game there, obviously, in his third overall game for City, I think that City team is primed to go and do bad things to Norwich. And that's why I've got Gundogan still in there until I hear whether Pep says he's in or not. I might change that at the last moment. But Torres, Cancelo, and it could well be a big result for Manchester City.
Oh, I think it's very, very key to keep that City triumvirate of Cancelo, Gundogan, and Torres. I think that's obvious looking at the opponents. You're looking at Salah as captained him. Burnley at home, you expect them to do well. The one that's standing out to me, Rob, massively over here is actually Joe Willock, and he was really a really good option last season. Remember, he scored 8 goals, I believe. No other midfielder scored more in that period when he was there on loan.
8 and 8.
8 and 8. Yeah, fantastic option. How much is he rated, by the way, in terms of his value?
Oh, he's mid value. I think it's about 6.5, something like that. He's a mid value player, and he was on. I bought him last week because there was every chance Newcastle signed him and registered him in time, and I was thinking, he'll play then. That's a really good last second buy. What happened? He didn't play, so he sat watching it in the stands. But that's okay because again, I'm looking at it a longer term investment, and I think with Willock. With Newcastle might get hammered in their first 10 games, but if they score goals, it's only going to be 2 players, isn't it? It's going to be Willock, or it's going to be the striker, isn't it? We know who it is. So it's going to be the same players over and over again with those. They've not got goals coming from deep, from other parts of midfield. Their centre backs are not particularly effective from set pieces. But that Newcastle team looks settled, doesn't it? It looks like it might do okay, And if you've got Willock in your side, I've put him in this week for one reason. And that was because Aston Villa really disappointed me in week 1. So I thought, looking at Aston Villa, I've got a Target there. Target, I think, only managed 45 minutes in the end because he was so bad. So I dumped him at the end of my bench, but I didn't want to get rid of him. I thought I'm going to stick with him for now. I don't want a knee jerk. And Digne did okay in game week 1. Everton played really well, though I think they'll go to Leeds, and I think Leeds will do well. And Dallas, I think, will also do well, but I'm happy for him to be my first substitute to say if Gundogan is injured. So if Gundogan suddenly doesn't magically appear against Norwich, I've got a player that I probably would have liked to have started anyway in Dallas. But Willock is a little bit of the wild card, but I see him scoring goals. He was my 6-week period signing last year as well. I bought him, and I think I got in him on a bit late. I think he'd scored 2 or 3, and then I bought him, and then he kind of had another 4 games where he scored, and then I think another 3 or 4 where he didn't. But he was brilliant towards the end of last season, and I think he'll take that chance. I wouldn't say he's a £25 million player like they paid for him, but I do think in FPL terms, he could be a kind of differential points winner in midfield.
Yeah, I agree, and I think Antonio was another one. Let's just touch on him before we wrap up.
Yeah,
really good points return. That game against Newcastle was crazy, wasn't it? I believe it was 4-2. But Antonio, even though he missed a penalty, great return, and he'll play up top for West Ham, and he was really effective. And Moyes seems to have got a good tune out of him. So I think he's a really good mid sort of value option, isn't he, up front?
I think with strikers, like I said at the top of the show, strikers generally don't give you the best value. You've just got to kind of find strikers that do a little bit of everything and keep the points ticking over, maybe get a goal every other week. You don't need a goal every week from them. That's why Lukaku is quite a tempting prospect. But when you look at Antonio there and you pair him with the players that I've got in there, Danny Ings was awful on his debut for Aston Villa. Still got a goal from the penalty spot. That's all I care about, in these terms. Antonio, they a bit hit or miss West Ham in that game. They obviously scored goals in the end, but it looked early on that it was going to be a bad day at the office for West Ham. But Antonio pulled it out the bag. So you look at someone like Antonio, and I think that even when West Ham play poorly, he's still going to get a goal, going to get an assist, something every other week. And that's what you gamble on for your strikers. That's why I've kept up with Tony. He hardly had a shot in that first game when Brentford beat Arsenal, but he played brilliantly. And that tells me his confidence is high. That means that he's going to keep going. That means against Crystal Palace, who are, let's be honest, they're probably not going to have a great season this year. I reckon they're going to be on the cusp of relegation, somewhere near that, maybe bottom 5, bottom 6. Tony, big striker, physical player. He might be able to exploit the weaknesses that Crystal Palace have. And I kept him this week deliberately. That was another reason why I didn't go for Lukaku, because that front three for me works really nicely in terms of balance. They got good numbers for me in week 1. I think they'll do it again in week 2.
Absolutely, Rob. I do agree. I've got Tony and I've got Ings as well. So it's gonna be interesting to see. I mean, I still need to do my team, but I'm also angling towards actually using a transfer. Sorry, and actually keep sticking with what I've got, because at the end of the day, I think looking ahead, I think it's my issues over the years is I panic sometimes and make 3 transfers here, 2 transfers here. I'm losing. After 3 game weeks, you're losing 12, 16 points. These are valuable points, so. But look, Rob, before we wrap up, we have got the masterclass on Sunday. We are actually going live straight after the Southampton game at 4:00. So anything else that you want to share with the listeners?
No, not really. As I said, good luck with your FPL teams. One hint and tip I will give at the end of the show is, I did say it last week, but I'll say it again, is that go and watch the press conferences on Friday, because that is where you'll get your final sniff as to what you're going to do. And there's always some little bit of information that comes out where you go, God, I've got that player. So many people do that. Like I think even you said last week about why not sign Foden.
Yeah.
But he was out. He was injured. And you learn that through the press conference system. You just kind of look at the injuries and see what's going on, and they'll talk about it. So keep your ear to the ground with that. And that team that I've picked, there's every chance that on Friday I might look at it at midday and go, actually, that doesn't work for me now. Tony stubbed his toe in training and might be on the bench for Brentford. Do I want to risk that? Or now do I pull the trigger on Lukaku? Is that what I'm going to do? So for me at the moment, no, that's not what I'm going to do. But information keeps rolling. So make sure you keep your ear to the ground for that on Friday, the day before, because that's the most important day for your team. I'll just say, just to add as well, some stuff that we've got going on. I'm doing another show called The Promised Land, which you'll find on my Twitter. I'm doing that with Scott Saunders from 90 Mins. You'll see that all over our socials. So please give that a listen. But also, obviously, our masterclass. We're doing a live one this week. People keep saying to us, please do the live one straight after games. This is an away match for United. I'm not actually at that game, so we can do it. So we're going to do that for you. You've asked for it, so we'll give you that. And that will be at 4 p.m. on Sunday.
Yeah, absolutely. And just guys, keep a watch out for when we do shows. Just put the notifications, tap notifications on YouTube, and you'll always be, notified when we are going live, when we do, because, some weeks we will do, for example, the masterclass the day after. Sometimes we'll do it live straight after, depending if Rob's at Old Trafford or not. So that's what we'll be doing.
And one favour, just so everyone, we've got such a loyal audience. We've, it's built up so massively over 12 months. If you do enjoy our products, everything we do and putting this show out, please share the YouTube channel with your friends. Yeah, go and get the link of the channel rather than the shows, and say, give it a try. Watch their shows, see if you're into it. Certainly, Man United fans will, love everything that we put out. But of course, with the FPL Masterclass, the idea is to kind of open up to all fans. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're a United fan or not. It's just you just have to know English football and play the game. So please go and get the YouTube link and send it out. We'll put it obviously in our bios as well. I think it's in mine. It's obviously in the Masterclass one as well. just copy and paste it, send it to your friends by email or by WhatsApp or by text. Just tell them to give us a go, and that will really help us.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. That would be really, really helpful. This is why we do the show. This is why we expand this, why we're doing different things, because you guys have enjoyed what we're doing. So thank you very much for listening, guys. Good luck this week. Good luck with Game Week 2, and we'll see you next time.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.